What's going on, U.S. History Mountain students? It is, what is today? Today is Thursday, January 7th, 2021. Gotta start remembering that. We're in the new year. I'm gonna keep writing 2020 on everything. Um, Today we're finishing up our World War One unit. We're gonna talk about the rebuilding kind of the world after World War One, kind of the plans that went around that, and then we're gonna look at the Treaty of Versailles. And it's kind of crazy how this all lined up with what's going on in our country right now. Some similarities, part of the homework assignment as well. One of the best parts about being a history teacher is those opportunities are presented to us sometimes. So let's get into it and we'll go from there. So we last talked about the Paris Peace Conference, where all these world leaders kind of met up to discuss and hammer out some treaty for the Central Powers assigned so the war could be officially ended. From an American perspective, Woodrow Wilson, our president, had an idea in regards to kind of what needs to be done. So he comes up with this idea and this thing called the 14 points. And it's essentially 14 different ideas that focus on kind of rebuilding the world post World War One. And they dealt with a variety of different things, a lot of things about being transparent with each other, freedom out in the open oceans, building down the armies. And then you had things that a lot of it dealt with like territory disputes, developing and establishing new countries, and things of that nature. And then probably the most important point in the long-lasting legacy of the 14 points was the calling for the establishment of like a group of nations that would help hopefully establish future world peace going forward. And so Woodrow Wilson was ahead of his time, I think, on this point, but there were a lot of reasons, and as we're going to find in a second, while that never really came to be successful. Eventually, this thing called the League of Nations was created, but it was incredibly ineffective. This was primarily because it was poorly organized. There was a lot of bickering between nations. It really allowed for nothing to ever be accomplished. And so soon the League of Nations lost all integrity and was just seen as a joke. Ironically enough, here in the United States, Woodrow Wilson couldn't convince Congress to vote to join the League of Nations, which continued to contribute to the idea of this League of Nations being seen as a joke. Despite it, the failures of it and the really inefficiency of it, it helped it helped lay, I gotta change that. It helped lay the groundwork for the United Nations, which is what we have today, which is a much more effective, uh, group of nations. Sorry about that. I don't know how to type or spell, apparently. There you have the League of Nations symbol right there, and then this is what the UN is. It's actually located in New York, and it's all the countries have a delegates that they send to kind of represent them. So it's pretty cool. Almost all the nations, actually. Some don't want to be a part of it, or have not been allowed to be a part of it. But let's talk about the important stuff here, and really the Treaty of Versailles, because the Treaty of Versailles, without a doubt, is fundamental in causing the rise of Hitler and the Nazi Party in Germany, which spirals the world down a path towards World War II. The treaty officially ended World War I, and it put almost all the blame on the Germans. Germany was forced to pay reparations. Reparations is when you got to pay something back. Around 30 billion. That's over 2.7 trillion dollars of today money. That's a ton. The United States GDP is about 18, 19 trillion. So, I mean, that is a ton of money. The reparations helped rebuild a war-torn Europe and also helped cover the healthcare costs for wounded Allied soldiers, which was kind of the kicker. It's that the Germans, who got blamed, even though there was the Ottoman Empire, Austria-Hungarian Empire, it was the Germans who were seen as the aggressors and were blamed. And now they had to pay for everything. They also put limits on how large the German military could be, so they really stripped down the German military. And it stripped Germany of a lot of its land, its original territories, its colonies around the world. So Germany took a fat L, and the German people were embarrassed. They felt it was unfair. And Germany would be going through some pretty tough times after the war because of all this. Again, like I mentioned, the treaty tried to create a League of Nations, but that didn't really work out. We already talked about that. And again, the treaty created a lot of countries like Poland, Finland, and Latvia independence. Um, and Austria and Hungary was no more. It officially became two nations. And then the Balkan nations formed Yugoslavia as a country. So a lot of territory switches over. And on the top, you have a map of World War One, pre-World War One Europe, and then on the bottom, you have the new map. So I mean, just take a look at the difference. In Eastern Europe, especially everything east of Italy, right? And look how much of that changes. Even in the United Kingdom, we see Ireland all of a sudden kind of gets, stood out there on the map and whatnot. Finland up here, right? Ottoman Empire now becomes Turkey. So a lot of changes go down. And ultimately, here's the legacy of this. It punished the Germans extensively, and it created a sense of resentment in the German public towards the Allied nations. This was also partially fueled by a myth that German government officials and propaganda officials perpetuated for years after the war. It's going to be a part of your homework assignment. Very similar to what we're seeing right now in our country. Moreover, life in Germany soon began to become miserable, and people were just desperate for new and strong leadership. So all of this was put in the gumbo, the perfect recipe, the perfect storm for an individual who spoke about rebuilding Germany to its former glory, no matter what it took, to avenge the people who had wronged Germany. That person would be Adolf Hitler, that person who led the Nazis and made that party what it was. And there are very scary similarities to what we are seeing right now in the United States. Different, but similar. And that's going to be the task for you to figure out in the homework assignment tonight. So I believe that's the end of our unit. Make sure you watch this video. Obviously, if you got questions, let me know. But I'll talk to you guys later. Peace.